Quick bounce back for Rick Serritella, my buddy. I'm fired up. You know, it's draft week, and I try to get Rick Serritella at Rick Serritella on X, Twitter, one of the best in the business, been doing it a very long time, NFL Draft Bible for years, and now he's an advanced scout himself for the 14-time Grey Cup champion Edmonton Elks. Used to be the Eskimos. They'll always be the Eskimos to me, but 14-time champions. We're talking about one championship here in Philadelphia. We're just still trying to find number 2, Rick. I kind of went down. By the way, is that an Alliance of American Football hat?
You know, it's not. It's an All Access Football.
Oh, all right.
It's almost like a copyright infringement.
Yeah,
that you bring it up.
I love it because I always love Rick Serritella's swag. Right? Yeah, I thought Charlie Ebersol gave you one of the. No, he wasn't the AA. Yes, he was the AA. Charlie.
Yeah, I don't think they have the money to sue me right now.
No, I do not. Charlie, yeah, he was running up some bills, but that's another discussion for another time. I just, you probably heard in the green room, I was just running down Howie's record, sort of Howie 2.0, I like to say, since he came back from exile. It's a pretty good record, Rick, overall. I think people get caught up in misses. Everybody misses in this, right? Is there anybody? You know, people say Jalen Reagor. Everybody's got misses. But overall, I think that record's pretty solid. Your thoughts from doing this as long as you have?
Yeah, to me, you know, it's kind of been like a batting average. If you can bat 300, I think you're doing very good when it comes to draft picks. If you can get 4 out of 10 or 5 out of 10, now you're
that's Hall of Fame level, baby.
Yeah. I mean, but if you look on average, every team gets 7 draft picks. I mean, you get hopefully one contributor out of the first 3 picks. I mean, if you look at the first round bust rate is like almost 40%. So you're hoping you get one guy that pans out on the first 2 days and one guy that pans out on the back end and maybe a guy that surprises. But really, traditionally, you get, you know, maybe 2 or 3 guys max from each draft class that are going to contribute. Now, if you remember when the Giants had that magical run, Ahmad Bradshaw in the 7th round, and they had a remarkable draft that year. Every single player, I think Diassi was the rookie that year. Every single player they drafted contributed to that Super Bowl team. So you do get a fluke class like that every now and then. But you look at what Howie Roseman has done. He's surrounded himself with some good front office people like Dave Caldwell, former GM, is there hanging out, and some guys that he's had there in the past. Some guys he has not been able to retain, and I think they're going to hurt a little bit more like we saw last year with the coaching continuity there. I think Sirianni's a little bit on the hot seat, but we can get into whatever topic you want over here.
Yeah, he is on the hot seat. I love people that pretend he isn't on the hot seat. I mean, come on. Everybody around the league sees it, and you're trying to sell that he's not a lame duck coach. If he doesn't have success this year, Rick, he's gone. Is there any other way to look at it? And the expectations are huge.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know if you had time. It was a lengthy article about Bill Belichick on ESPN.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a tremendous job by this.
Yeah, I thought it was very telling, though. Like, the Eagles kicked the tires on Billy Belichick, and I think they wanted to do their due diligence there. And I think, you know, maybe, you know, you're seeing that Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen had a lot more to do with the success of the Eagles than people realize.
Yeah. Jonathan Gannon, still enemy number 1 here in Philadelphia for far too many people. That's amazing. I mean, that guy put together one heck of a defense, and the Eagles fell off a cliff. So maybe people should look in the mirror and say, hey, maybe he's not that bad after all. But yeah, let's get into the draft and the fact that, number 1, I'd like to ask everybody, and Mark Dominic was on conference call last week, got to talk to him, and he put the number of legitimate first-round picks, legitimate. I know our buddy Jody Mack hates when I say this because there's 32 first-round picks, but there's never really 32 first-round picks from a talent standpoint. Mark put the number 23, and that was higher than I've gotten from most people. I want Rick Serritella's number, where there's a little bit of a drop off from maybe first
Yeah.
to second round.
Well, I'm going to be on the opposite end of the spectrum here. Typically, when people ask me this question, I think of players who, no matter what year, would be first round automatic draft picks, right? So to me, there's maybe 8 to 10. I'm not as high on the quarterbacks as everybody else. I think there's one franchise signal caller. His name is Caleb Williams. So the other 4 or 5 wouldn't be in that mix for me. I think that there's no blue chips at running back. Wide receiver, there's 3. Tight end, there's 1. Offensive line, there's really 2 for me. And then on defense, there's really like 3 or 4 guys that would be a first round pick in any given year. So put me at about a dozen.
Ooh, I like harsh graders. I like hard graders.
Oh, that's just real. That's real
Yeah.
talk.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. And you got to be an optimistic realist. That's what N'Kobe Dean said last week. So,
Yeah.
um, I'm with you on the fact that blue chippers are, and by the way, defensively, Rick, this is not a good draft for blue chippers defensively.
It's unbelievable. Like, you try to find a home inside the top 10 for a defensive guy to come off the board.
Yeah.
8, I guess, is where Atlanta's standing out there. Is there a defensive guy worthy enough in the draft where someone's going to really trade up and go get somebody? I think the problem is, like, you've got 3 edge rushers that are really evenly matched. I think Dallas Turner is more of a stand-up 34 guy. I think Jared Verse is a more Philadelphia 4-3 hand in the dirt kind of guy that would fit well. And then you have Latu, who's probably better than both of them, but at one point was medically retired with a neck injury, which is scary stuff. And he couldn't get cleared over there at Washington. So, we don't have access to that medical. And I think that, you're going to see possibly the top 10 picks all be offense.
Well, that's where I wanted to go, Latu, because that's where I'm kind of leaning for the Eagles from the perspective of because I think they're going to do what they always do, and that's that identify 3, 4 players and make that targeted trade up when the last one is there. If somebody falls a little bit. In the case of Latu, I'm with you. Nobody knows. I wish I was a fly on the wall of Arston Oda's offense if he's going to get cleared. If he gets cleared, I think that's an Eagles pick. I think that's the guy. Now, if they clear him, somebody else might clear him. And I think he's the best defensive player in the draft if he's healthy. Would you agree with that?
I think he's in the mix. You're not the only one to share that sentiment. I know my good friend Brian Baldinger says the same thing. I'll tell you what bothers me a little bit about Latu was down in the Senior Bowl. I don't know. I thought he struggled against some of the bigger guys. I know he's fast and agile and it has some bend, but I saw him get pushed around a little bit, and that was a little bit troublesome for me. I think Jared Verse is the best edge rusher personally. I think it's very close. I think Verse is a candidate too for the Eagles to be there on the board, and I do agree that Howie Roseman traditionally likes to build from the inside out. So I think one of these edge rushers, the Eagles too, I think they're in a good spot that they don't necessarily have to go and give up draft equity because of the way this board falls. Like, to me, I think 12 to 15, how many people are really worth outside of the quarterbacks? How many players are really worth trading up for? That's how you define blue chip players. So when you get to that 12 to 32 range, those boards are wishy-washy no matter who you ask. So there's going to probably be a guy like on the board in the top 15 for the Eagles that's kind of hanging out when they roll around. What are they at?
22 to start. Well, that's kind of my thought process on contender versus non-contender, volume versus I don't care about volume. To me, if you're a contender, you shouldn't be worried about volume. You should be trying to find a player that can be a difference maker for you. Whereas if you're a 3-win team, I want a bunch of picks. I want to be the analytics guy. I want 13 picks and populate the roster. I think the Eagles obviously are more in the former category. They need to find a difference maker. So for corner, for instance, I focused on Terrion Arnold as a guy who would be probably the best fit for a Big Fangio scheme, in my opinion. There's some other good corners, and it seems to be a favorite flavor type thing, whether it's Cooper, DeJean, Nate Wiggins. I don't know how high you are on Rackestraw. Who am I missing? Kool-Aid McKinstry, but there's some medical concerns with him. Um, are they all that even, or does somebody stand out to you?
Oh, I mean, I think Quinyon Mitchell in
Oh,
terms of
Quinyon, I missed. Yeah.
yeah, I think in terms of just the size, athleticism, physicality, I don't think there's any question he's the top cornerback in this year's draft. I think it's really a clear cut to me. I think Quinyon Mitchell will be the first corner. Terrion Arnold, I think, will be number two. Mitchell can really get in your face and play that press man physical coverage. Arnold, I think, has the flexibility there to play man or zone. And I have Cooper DeJean number 3 on my board. And I heard Krause say that could be an Eagles selection. You talk about being able to pick up the defensive scheme and learn that, like Cooper DeJean at Iowa, very well coached. And I'll give you a first round dark horse. Maybe he's hanging out for the Eagles in round 2. He might sneak into round 1, but Rutgers has always been a product of well-coached cornerbacks under Greg Schiano. Max Melton is a guy,
Yeah,
a lot of,
Max.
people are
I like
projecting
him.
him as a
Yeah.
slot, but he's played like 90% of his snaps have come on the boundary. So like you talk about, we've talked about Avonte Maddox always being the durability concerns. Like Melton's a guy with that inside outside flexibility, also very smart, can pick up the playbook. And I'll tell you what, man, I mean, his numbers are also right there with all these guys. So
Well, now that you're with the Eskimos and doing stuff, and it's sort of an interesting, job, to be honest, personnel, because different teams have different philosophies and different schemes, and they're looking for different traits and different types of players. And the good teams are the ones that are able to mesh the personnel with the coaching and all that kind of stuff. So I bring up Big Fangio, and that's probably why I've sort of skipped over Quinyon Mitchell. Not that I think he's a great player, but as you mentioned, to me, he's a press corner. All right, what is that going to do for me? Jalen Ramsey's one of the best press corners, maybe the best press corner of the generation. Vic didn't use him like that, and he's pissed off to the point he didn't use him like that because he wants to play press coverage. Plays cover 6, quarters, cover 8, everything but press. So to me, he's not a fit for the Eagles. So if I said we're going to be zone heavy, we're going to be zone 75% of the time, which go find me the best of the bunch in that philosophy, who was it for you at that point?
well, I think Arnold might be a better fit, but I still think Mitchell's the better talent and might be able to adapt and adjust. That's what the great game of football is all about. I just think that, this guy, I don't know. I saw some reminiscence of the kid with the Jets there coming out of Cincinnati.
Sauce Gardner. Yeah.
I did, man. I saw that down at the Senior Bowl. I saw flashes of that. So to me, I think when you start drafting for need over talent, that's where you kind of screw yourself and can misplay the board. I think Mitchell can do it. I think he's a rare talent and a guy that I would try to make it work, or you know, again, maybe just adapt and adjust or tweak some things. Now, Cooper DeJean, he might be better than both of those guys in terms of fit because he can line up. See, like people question his hips. I don't question his hips at all. I think he has very adequate, above average hips. Uh, he can play the slot. He can play safety if you need. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson wasn't always the most durable guy. They've had some issues there at safety. So, like Cooper DeJean is that chess piece for you. So, I mean, you could state a case for all three of those guys, right? And you could also say, like, hey, there's going to be, you mentioned Rakestraw, like Melton. I saw somebody say Melton's too small. Well, He's the same size, if not bigger, than Terrion Arnold and Rakestraw. So are you saying those guys can't play on the boundary either? Check it out. Kamari Lassiter, Max Melton's a bigger guy. So, I don't think people realize that. And I think Sainris still, if you want a slot guy on day 2, that guy's pretty good. TJ Tampa, Iowa State, didn't run the best 40. So maybe he's hanging out on day 2. Like cornerback, there's some depth there, right? Where you can wait till day 2. I think if you want like a edge rusher,
You better
you've got
act
to pull
early. Yeah.
you've got to pull the trigger early.
Yeah.
Those edge rusher, quarterbacks and getting after the quarterback, those guys are going to get moved out. And I will say, like, I don't think the Eagles. I like Troy Fontenot out of Washington. I don't think the Eagles will do that. I think they're okay right now on offensive line, but like offensive tackles, you could see just like 6 to 8 alone.
Oh, they're
going the first
loaded.
round.
Well, that's why I've been, and I'm still hyper focused on the offensive line. Bottom line is that's what the Eagles do. They draft offensive linemen. But if they're going that direction, Rick, they'd like to have somebody who could start at right guard day 1 and then kick out for Lane Johnson whenever Lane decides to retire.
That's Fontenot all day.
And that's Fontenot, but I don't think he's going to be there. So I think number 2 is Latham. Agree or disagree? And how high would you have to go to get a JC Latham?
I think I actually don't have Latham as high. I think he's strictly a right tackle. So
that's good. That's what they want. Can he play right guard? Can he play right guard?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I suppose he could. Yeah, he could. He's 6'6", 340. So he could be that guard and then kick out, once Lane hangs up the I think it's going to be alt 1. And again,
by the way, how clean is Joe Alt? My God, that guy. I'm going out. I mean, he's the safest pick in the draft. I always pick the safest pick in the draft. He's my safest pick in the draft.
I'll tell you, again, you want my comparison he's got the Joe Thomas comparison. Like he's going to be.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
Yeah. You hate to compare him to a gold jacket, but this guy's going to be hanging out for a decade in the league, blindside protector. Fashanu from Penn State, it was unfortunate he tweaked his hammy at the combine. I was at his pro day. He wasn't able to do any testing. He did go through positional, so that, maybe he slides a little bit, but people like Fuega from Oregon State, he's an emotional guy, man. He gets penalized a lot. False starts,
that'll go over well in Philadelphia.
Funny funny business after the whistle, Fuega, you gotta watch, man. You gotta harness in some of those emotions. Fashanu's a cleaner player, in my opinion. And then I think it's, probably Latham, Fontenot are kind of bunched in there. Marius Mims is the prototypical mold, right? If you talk about size, athleticism, but lacks experience, a little bit raw, had that blood spinning procedure done. Only 8 games started. And then the guy that I'll give you one guy I'm lower on and one guy I'm higher on, like Tyler Guyton of Oklahoma. I'm putting him a second round grade, and I feel that's a little generous. I just don't think this guy, I don't think he's a starter in the National Football League. I think he's a little bit awkward with the footwork and the body balance and doesn't get low enough for me. And then Jordan Morgan out of Arizona, like this guy gets downgraded because it's 32 7/8 inches, 32 7/8 inches, right? That 1/8 of an inch would put him at 33. Jordan Morgan from Arizona is probably going to outplay half of the offensive tackles.
Yeah, he's a good player. Yeah, Jordan Morgan. I think he might be a first rounder as well. No question. I go back to Tyler Steen with the Eagles last year, and people projected him. He played left tackle at Vandy, right tackle at Vandy. Then he played left tackle at Alabama, and everybody projected him inside because he's got smaller arms. And then the Eagles get him, and they're like, "Oh, he's more comfortable at tackle." And they're now it's like he might start a right guard. He's going to compete, but if they can't get anybody else, but I think they're finding out pretty quickly, he's a pretty good tackle, and maybe he's not that great of a guard. But that arm length, I don't know. Sometimes I think they get too hyper focused on that, Rick.
I agree. I'll give you another one. Dominic Puny out of Kansas, right? 33 and 3/8-inch arms. But this guy, I mean, he was a stonewall at Mobile against the best of the best. A lot of people projecting him as a guard. Dominic Puny out of Kansas. I think he's a starting tackle. Christian Jones out of Texas. He's an interesting guy, 4-year starter, very solid size, length. And then, day 2, mid rounds, there's like Walter Rouse out of Oklahoma, started, feels like, for 5 years between Stanford and Oklahoma. Roger Rosengarten out of Washington.
Yeah, the Eagles brought him in for top 30.
So I'm down on the field at Senior Bowl, and I see this this quick moving tackle, Rosengarten. Talk about a right tackle,
Where do you think he's going? I think he's day 2, though.
Yeah, I think he's probably in that early round 3 mix, because he's a little bit raw, he's a little bit wild, he's like a wild horse. He's a little out of control at sometimes, but he's good, he's athletic, he can get to the second level. So I think he's a guy that probably takes a half a season to a season to get caught up to the NFL speed of things, but he's going to be all right. But again, like, if you want to plug and play tackle, you've really got to, I think, pounce in round 1, because coming back in round 2, these guys are just going to be gone.
Yeah. Day 3, I think here in Philadelphia, a lot of people have forgotten about running back because Saquon Barkley's here, and rightfully so as a starter. But the Eagles have no depth. Kenny Gainwell's coming on his last year of his rookie deal. They got a couple futures guys. Ty Davis Price, who was a 3rd-round pick a couple years ago. Lou Nichols led the nation in rushing, but these are not big-time prospects, obviously.
Yeah.
I need a day 3 running back starting in the 5th round. I need Rick Serritella to uncover a gem. I don't want to say Isaiah Pacheco, but that's what I want. I want Isaiah Pacheco with a 5th round pick, and he was a 7th round pick. So that should be easy for you, right, Rick?
Well, I did have a 2nd round pick on Pacheco.
Nice.
I give it.
Should have been a 2nd round pick.
I do a little Brooklyn brawler for you and give myself a pat on the back on that one. But how about Blake Watson out of Memphis? Little combine snub. This guy's been on my radar all season long. So Brandon Thomas, the starting running back, goes down in training camp, tears his ACL. In comes Blake Watson, a transfer from Old Dominion. He arrives after spring ball, so really wasn't on the NFL scouting radar. I don't know if it was your show. We talked about how does a guy like this not get invited to the combine, but he was the MVP of the Hula Bowl. I thought he deserved to be the MVP of the Shrine Bowl. Does a little bit of everything well, run, block, catch. Now, at his pro day, I mean, he tore it up. I have it here. 4'4", 40, 41.5-inch vert, 11'3" broad. Blake Watson out of Memphis, he'll be hanging out there.
Sounds like explosion, those numbers. Yeah. A lot of explosion, and that's always a good thing. Yeah, the Eagles, I guarantee the Eagles draft a running back on day 3. I barely make guarantees, but I guarantee they're going to get.
It's a good draft class for some bargain bin shopping. So
yeah. How deep do you think this draft is? A lot of people have criticized it and said, if you got a lot of 6th, 7th round picks, you're better off getting some future picks.
Yeah, my response to that is always, every year there seems to be starters found on day 3 of the draft, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. So if you do your homework and you do your due diligence and you stay true to your board and you're prepared and you cover your grounds, I think, every draft you can find starters in every round. This year's draft, I've heard a lot of mixed things about the older age. I mean, I'll tell you what, look at these quarterbacks alone, 24, 25, 26.
Oh, Knicks, man.
Oh, my God.
Sam Hartman, I think, is older than me, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if Sam's getting drafted, but
probably not. He's on the fringe there. But, I think with the NIL, a lot of these guys, I know when I did the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, we lost a lot. Like day 3 guys were our specialty niche there for that all-star game. We lost so many guys last year to NIL deals. They go back to school, they go collect 50 grand, 150 grand, and go hang out in college for another year. I think it's the new normal, so get used to it. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because you're getting guys now that are just more ready. But like, to your point, the Eagles are a team, they're built to win now. So whether it's Latu, who has a medical injury, or an older player who might not be there for a second go around or a second contract, I think the Eagles are a team that, one of the few teams I can afford to roll the dice, right, and get a little risque. Like this kid, Tavondre Sweat, like, talk about falling off a cliff because he got a DUI,
DUI,
DWI.
yeah.
Oh man, this
Bad
guy, I
timing,
mean,
man. Bad timing.
yeah, but you know what? I'll tell you what, this guy is a mountain mover. He's a first round talent for me. Somebody's going to get an incredible steal. I don't think he makes it out of the top 100 still, but like, no, everybody stopped talking about that guy. Whew.
Yeah, everybody's scared nowadays. Anything happens. It's the world we live in. But you're right. Some GMs will look at that as tremendous value and try to make that decision and live with the consequences. At Rick Serritella, make sure you follow Rick on X, Twitter. He does a tremendous job. NFL Draft Bible for many years, the creator of that, one of the best draft guys in the business. All Access Football. I love the hats. Edmonton Elks, too.
Yeah.
Advanced scout for the Edmonton Elks.
Hey, April 30th is the CFL draft. Don't forget
April
about
30th, the CFL. So we'll put a asterisk on that as well. So I'm going to put you on the spot here and say, I don't mean, because I know my perception. We know Howie Roseman, and the one thing he said it last week in his draft availability, Rick. He said, "I like the trades. He's going to trade up. He might trade back. He's probably not going to pick a 22. Just give me a player. Give me a player for Philadelphia. First round of this draft."
I'm gonna go Jared Verse, man. The
Nice.
Albany Dane transfer to Florida
Jody
State.
loves that. Albany.
High motor guy, man, has dealt with adversity on and off the field. Just really can get after it. And I think if you're looking for a guy to maybe offset some of that Hassan Reddick production versus your guy, one of those older guys that you can plug and play. And I think somebody who could be a double-digit annual kind of sack master in the National Football League.
Yeah, I probably put too much stock into Howie, his pre-draft press conference, because he got really rare for Howie. He got a little bit frustrated with a question over Hassan Reddick, and it was basically saying, wait, something else is coming. And it might be Jared Verse. I focused on Latu, but hey, if either one of us is right, Howie will probably say, I told you. Maybe he used the word vacuum. It doesn't happen in a vacuum, Rick. All these moves lead to other moves, but always good to see you, buddy. Tremendous job with the NFL draft. Love Rick Serritella, and I'll probably try to get you back after the draft. I know you're very busy, but
yeah. We got to do it before May 7th. I got to leave
before May. I'll get you on before May. It's
CFL training camp. Yeah,
CFL training camp.
All
right.
Hey,
I got that marked down. Appreciate it, bud.
Yeah, we'll chat soon. Thank you.
More. We'll put a bow on the show. I'll say it to Jody again, since we're talking about Albany. More Birds 365 after the break.